The bustling streets of Manila were alive with honking cars, shouting vendors, and the endless chatter of people rushing through their day. In the middle of that noise sat a thin boy, no older than 12, with bare feet and a guitar that looked almost as broken as his shoes. The wood was scratched, the strings uneven, and yet, when his small hand strummed across them, a sound filled the air that didn't belong to the chaos around him. His name was Arnel, and though life had given him very little, he carried something far more powerful than coins or food. He carried a voice that could stop time. Every day, he positioned himself on the same corner, hoping someone would notice. His songs weren't just melodies, they were stories of his hunger, his dreams, and the weight of struggles too heavy for a child to bear. But most people hurried past, distracted by their own problems, barely glancing at the boy pouring his heart out through music. A few dropped loose change into the box at his feet, but for Arnel, it wasn't money he longed for, it was a chance. A chance to be heard. A chance to believe that his voice mattered. Though the city swallowed his notes, Arnel never stopped. With each song, he imagined himself on a grand stage, lights shining down, people listening, not because they pitied him, but because they felt his music deep inside. That dream, fragile as it was, kept his spirit alive. The day of the audition arrived like a miracle Arnel never saw coming. He had been singing on the same street corner when a kind stranger approached, moved by the emotion in his voice. That stranger happened to work with a local charity and told Arnel about a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a televised international talent show holding auditions in Manila. At first, Arnel thought it was a joke. How could a barefoot boy with nothing but an old, battered guitar belong on such a stage? But something inside him whispered that maybe this was the chance he had been waiting for. On the morning of the audition, Arnel clutched his guitar tightly, his heart pounding as he entered the massive venue. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Bright lights lit the stage, cameras moved across the crowd, and the judges sat in front of him, their faces both intimidating and curious. His legs shook as he walked out, and the sound of the audience murmuring filled his ears like a roaring ocean. For a moment, he considered turning back, too nervous to even breathe. But then, he thought about all the nights he had gone hungry, all the times his music was ignored on the streets, and the dreams that carried him through. This was not just an audition, it was his chance to prove to the world, and to himself, that his voice was worth hearing. With trembling hands, he adjusted the strap of his guitar and prepared to sing. As the lights dimmed and silence fell across the hall, Arnel took a deep breath and let his fingers brush the strings of his battered guitar. The first notes of Hotel California floated through the air, fragile yet filled with something raw and honest. His voice followed, low and trembling at first, but then it grew, steady, rich, and haunting. The crowd, once restless and distracted, suddenly leaned in as if the entire world had paused to listen. The judges exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from polite curiosity to stunned disbelief. Arnel's voice was unlike anything they had expected. It wasn't polished or trained in the way most contestants were, but it carried the weight of every hardship he had endured, every night spent hungry, every dream that kept him alive. His tone was filled with pain, yet wrapped in hope, and it pierced straight into the hearts of everyone listening. By the time he reached the chorus, the atmosphere had changed completely. The murmurs had stopped, the cameras zoomed in on faces in the audience, many with tears brimming in their eyes. Arnel's small figure on the enormous stage looked almost fragile, yet his voice soared with a strength that shook the room. Each note seemed to beg for recognition, not for himself, but for the beauty of a gift he had carried silently through the streets of Manila. And in that moment, the poor barefoot boy was no longer invisible, he was unforgettable. The final chord of Arnel's song lingered in the air, trembling like a prayer. For a heartbeat, the hall was silent, so silent that Arnel feared he had failed. Then, suddenly, the audience erupted in thunderous applause. People rose to their feet, clapping and cheering as tears rolled down their faces. The boy who had once been ignored on the streets now stood at the center of a standing ovation. Arnel's eyes widened, his small hands gripping the guitar as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. He had never heard such a sound directed at him before, applause that wasn't out of pity, but out of genuine awe. The judges, visibly shaken, wiped their eyes. One of them leaned forward, her voice breaking as she whispered to her fellow panelists, "This isn't just talent, this is soul." Then it happened. A judge slammed the golden buzzer, and the hall exploded with golden confetti. The moment was overwhelming, bright lights, glitter falling from above, and the sound of celebration crashing around him. Arnel dropped to his knees, overcome with emotion, clutching his guitar to his chest as tears streamed down his face. For the first time in his life, he wasn't invisible, forgotten, or just another child on the street. He was a star, if only for this moment. The judges rushed to embrace him, their words trembling with sincerity, "You've just changed your life forever." And deep inside, Arnel knew they were right. Backstage, Arnel wiped the confetti from his hair, still trembling as though the moment had been a dream. His mother, who had been watching from the sidelines with anxious eyes, rushed forward and wrapped him in her arms. She whispered through her tears, "You did it, Anak, you finally did it." For years, she had watched her son sing to strangers on the street, hoping that someday someone would see what she had always known, that his voice was a gift meant for the world. The judges soon joined them, their faces still damp with emotion. One knelt to Arnel's level and said, "Your voice is pure, but it's your heart that touched us. Never forget this moment, you are meant to shine." Their words carried more than encouragement, they carried a promise that his life was about to change. The boy who once sang for coins under the scorching Manila sun was now on a path toward something greater than he had ever imagined. As he looked around, at the cameras, the cheering crowd beyond the curtain, and his mother's proud smile, Arnel realized that his journey was no longer just about survival. It was about hope, about proving that dreams born in the hardest places could still take flight. That night, as the world replayed his performance, people everywhere were reminded of one simple truth: sometimes, the voices that rise from the humblest beginnings carry the power to move us all.